a company-wide theme overtaking the Coffinverse in 2023.
Luxy Turner! Everybody getting ready? It's your boy Brian Pulido, proud publisher of Coffin Comics, and here we are. Special edition of Beer with Brian, the mobile edition. I'm going to be moving around. This is a program of the Coffin Comics Sworn Club. And if you are not a member of the Sworn Club, I got to tell you, you're missing out. Not only do Sworn Club members get a cool membership kit filled with goodies, they get a 24-hour advantage on all the new news from Coffin Comics and a 1-hour advantage on the great majority of promotions through Coffin Comics Shop. So what are you waiting for? Do it. Thursday, April 13th, tomorrow, Metallica, Lux Eterna, 72 Seasons coming out. I'm stoked. I've liked everything that I've heard so far, and I'm getting ready to hear what the boys have to say, man. 72 seasons, I guess the implication there is the first 18 years of a person's life. It's a rumination. I think James Hetfield is a really excellent lyricist for, all of our thoughts and emotions and frustrations. He's just a great poet for outsiders. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Again, Beer with Brian, mobile edition. This is an informal conversation where I talk about thoughts of the day and your questions and answers. So without further ado, there's questions in there. Let's rock some of them out. But before we do, I'm going to ask Jimmy Coffin to take a step back and show you where we're at. We are in the Coffin Comics Company store. This is the Coffin Comics Company store. And this weekend, I'd be remiss, we're bringing in Sora Sung for an artist celebration. This is probably her first West Coast appearance in forever. So if you are in the great tri-state area of the American Southwest, come to Mesa, Arizona and be part of the artist celebration on Saturday, April 15th from 12 to 5 p.m. in person. And look, a couple people, maybe you can't make it. I get it. So exclusives related to the Sora Sung Artist Celebration begin tomorrow, 9 a.m. Arizona time, currently Pacific Daylight Time for club members, and then 10 a.m. for the rest of the world. All right, sorry, can't help myself. Anybody got any questions out there? I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, KP Heaton wants to know, greetings from Louisiana.
Greetings.
Of all the comics you've worked on, which is your favorite?
Of all the comics I've worked on, my favorite is usually the one I just finished. If only because I'm fired up about a subject and I'm getting into it. So a while ago, I finished all these 2023 storylines, including Cybernetic Desecration, Imperial Requiem, which is coming out in August. And I love what we're doing in there. The crazy cyber thing, Days of Future Past, alternative universe stuff. Great. But I am neck deep in our publishing schedule for 2024, 2025. I'm completely fired up about it, and there's very little I can tell you about it, except that in 2024, the storyline will be a celebration of Lady Death's 30 years, and the extra books we're doing next year will be Lady Gunfighter, Chapter 1, co-written by myself and Mike McLean, illustrated by Joel Gomez. He is working on it now. It's good. And Mike Morg, Mad Mike Morg, is getting his first chapter. I am not going to announce the artist. I do not want to overhype, but these pages are outrageous. We are blessed by the comic gods with these incredible artists. Holy mackerel. So I guess the answer is it's the latest. If it wasn't, maybe I wasn't doing my job right. If I was sort of just phoning it in, maybe that's not right. I should be fired up about the latest thing.
We got Bob Cronister watching, just saying, what's up, Sworn Nation?
Bob, how are you? One thing I will say, though, also is I went back in time and I looked in my files and I discovered a couple things. I discovered there are 2 Lady Death stories that I wrote in the early 00s that have never been published. And I'm sort of grappling with what we're going to do there. But also, there is a book that I wrote during my previous publishing era called Lady Death Pirate Queen. And I personally loved that story and I loved that work. Originally it was presented as a 30-page story. And I'm breaking the news now and letting you know that since we own the underlying copyright of the material, we're actually going to redo that book. I've expanded it from 30 pages to 46 pages. It's a very design-heavy book, and it talks about a time where Lady Death was in a whole nother realm, and she was a privateer and a pirate. And man, I'm really proud of it. So I don't think it was fully realized under the former publisher, and I really want a chance for today's generation to see this book, which at this point is now 16 years old. So I am quite proud. We are going to represent it. We're going to begin. I've completed the revised script, and I have assigned the artist. Not telling you who, but I look forward to putting it out sometime in 2024, 2025. So I also discovered one other thing, and I'm not going to talk about it yet, but another juicy morsel of the past where I'm like, man, we got to let people see this.
We got Eric Hart just saying, hey, Brian, you're looking good and healthy.
Why, thank you, Eric. Thank you kindly.
Solomon saying, what's up, Brian, in the house?
61, baby.
How did you come up with the idea for Lady Death's backstory?
Well, how did I come up with the idea for Lady Death's backstory? The truth of the matter is Lady Death originally was a supporting character in Evil Ernie. And really the story was about Evil Ernie and his idea of the ideal woman. So I got the image of what Lady Death was and her attitude long before I got her story. So her attitude was inspired by the real-life horror host Vampira. I'm an immense fan. If you don't know much about Vampira, look her up. There's a lot to be read about her. What I liked about Vampira was that she was cold, and she was not tethered to a man, and she had no apologies for who she was. And I just didn't see that in comics. Comics, you know, ladies always had a man on the arm, maybe a little subservient to the man, maybe except Wonder Woman, right? She's still a warrior. So I loved this attitude. I felt it was never presented, and it captured something I just wanted to reflect back out, which is, you know, women who were just boss ladies and take no stuff from anybody, calling the shots the way they see it, owning their sexuality, and just sort of like, you know, taking names, man. I just love that attitude. But it's true, I didn't actually have the backstory. So I began a journey to arrive at the backstory and decided, actually having seen a movie, I think, called by Paul Verhoeven, named, I believe it was named Fire in Blood. It was a Viking story. And as I was already in the inquiry to, well, what is Lady Death's story, I saw this movie, and there was something about the backdrop of the movie. It wasn't literal, really, but it was some sort of thing about the backdrop of the Black Plague, where I was like, okay, I think I'm going to use this. This is a great setting, a great time for this character. And that just became a journey. And there was a lot of, it was a process. It wasn't overnight. It wasn't like a bang. It was sort of like more like over the course of a year, pulling together all these interesting elements, coming up with the drama, the family dynamic, who's the enemy, why, the journey, etc. So that's not the most linear explanation, but that's an explanation. That's how I began the whole journey of coming up with her backstory.
Hellraiser wants to ask, so you mentioned you don't listen to music as you work.
I don't.
Is there any media outside of creating that inspires you?
All media inspires me. Don't get it twisted. I am a sponge. My friend Adam Goldfein says he observes me ingesting pop culture and then kind of putting it out in a whole different way. When I am not working, of course, I'm watching movies. Deep track movie person. Heck, I co-founded a horror and science fiction movie festival that goes on to this day here in Phoenix in 2005. I love music, as most people know. I love these things. So I believe I could be inspired by anything, particularly as I'm exploring a story. It's like I actually do view myself as like a vessel, and the vessel is kind of open to receive signals, and that might serve the theme that I've decided upon. So heck yeah, man, I love it all. And I think probably my specialty is looking at pop culture, but not reflecting the obvious. Like I'll find something really off to the side or quirky or odd or hasn't been presented before and kind of reflect it back. And I feel like that thought process has also served me in business as well, because a lot of the initiatives that I apply to business, I do not get at all from looking at other comic book companies. In fact, I mean, probably to the day, I just don't look at other comic book companies. But I do look at other industries and initiatives and actions they may take and say, how could that be applicable to what we're doing? So yeah, that whole think different thing has been very, very helpful, I must say.
Matt wants to know, when is the reveal of the next La Muerta chapter?
So the reveal of the next La Muerta chapter is probably going to be sooner than you think. We have set up today a pre-launch page for the upcoming Kickstarter. We're popping the links out all over social, so get on it, because as soon as it goes live, you'll get a notification. But let's see here. It's probably going to be, what is it? The last Wednesday in April, we're going to do the full-on show it all, show the mock-ups of everything, pages, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know what that date is, but last Wednesday in April. Does that sound about right, Jimmy Coffin?
I think that's correct.
There you go.
Scott wants to know, knowing your love of classic horror movies, any chances of a horror book in the future?
I'd very much like to do a horror book. I believe that Mike Morg is fairly set as a horror book. I am in the infancy of exploring a whole new initiative of collaboration with our company and other companies, deciding the viability, the interest, and within that, I could see us collabing with some horror-based companies. Can't really say more about that because it's truly in its infancy, but as opposed to Coffin Comics being of service to other properties, telling their stories, our interest is taking our character with other known properties and bringing them together. You know, some people say that's a crossover. It's not exactly what I'm talking about, but in the next 5 years, it would not be unusual to see our characters, Lady Death, others, teaming up with other like-minded brands for stories.
Dan wants to know, what is your favorite comic fight scene?
Dan, some of my favorite comic fight scenes, you know, you really got to give it up to like Death of Superman. Doomsday versus Superman is pretty incredible. So that was a multi-issue book that jumped over different Superman titles. But when it came right down to Superman 75, it was all splash pages. And it was just Doomsday and Supes duking it out. I remember there's a really amazing panel where they both punch each other and essentially knock each other out. We completely homaged that in Hell Witch versus Lady Death. That's one I like. Other slugfest I always adore is Thing versus Hulk. That goes back as far as the Hulk and the Thing facing off in Fantastic Four 25 and 26. And it goes on and on. I mean, there's many, many good. There's a Marvel team up. What number? Marvel 2 and 1, number 12, I think, is Hulk Thing. I like those. So those are some that come to mind.
Eric is saying, you mentioned about a week ago possibly reacquiring the rights to Lady Death and the Crow. Have you started that? Yeah.
I haven't started it, but I'm interested in starting it. So yeah, I am. It's like a different head, you know, like it's so convenient and wonderful. I sit in a room and I write and concoct stuff and put it out there. It's wonderful. It's another head. I guess it's like what I call my afternoon mindset, where it's like, okay, I'm going to go track down the person who's the decision maker in this thing and try to have the substantial conversations to see if this thing is viable and, you know, see how smooth or unsmooth would the process be. Because Eric, let's look at it this way. I really haven't had a boss in forever. So even when you start collabing, it's kind of bosses. So I'm always, the first part of the conversation is this boss going to be fun to play with or not fun to play with? You know, and that's the whole thing for me.
Yanis wants to know, any chance for an animated movie involving the newer characters?
You know, our core competency at Coffin Comics is telling the stories in the world of comics and art, of course, collectible comics. So our competency doesn't go beyond that. We're certainly storytellers, and our group does have background in screenwriting and stuff like that. But as far as like the studio who would invest massive amounts of money to do that, we need a partner. So until such a day, we're going to keep making our comics. And until such a time that the offers are correct for Coffin Comics, we just keep making comics.
Ray has a comment. He's saying chaos ruled the world.
That's right, Ray. I see you on your post, man. You're on a tear when chaos ruled the world. You know, it's interesting you say that, because chaos did rule the world in the 90s, but would it be out of bounds for me to say it looks like Coffin's like really ruling these days too?
Jay wants to know, what do you think about doing a one-shot of all the Earthbound characters teaming up? We'd love to see Zach and Zane, Lamorta, and others fight together.
Well, the idea of doing all the Earthbound characters teaming up, sort of like the street level crime people, sounds fun. What I can tell you is that we are partially addressing that in the 2024 storyline. So you will like what we announced about La Muerta for 2024, who she is working with in that storyline. I think you'll enjoy.
Haley wants to know, when you write your stories, do you visualize the panels in your head at the same time, or is it the process which comes later?
No, it's all purely visual for me. So let's see, how would I distill it? Obviously, when I'm writing a story, it's going to have a plot, and there's key points and that have to be attained each time. Comics usually end on a cliffhanger, so there's those kind of requirements. The next thing I'm really interested in is moments, or how do we tell the story visually? So when I personally communicate to artists, I might make a recommendation and say, I see this as a 9-panel grid, equal sized, and what's happening inside. Or, hey, ma'am, this is a 5-panel grid. Everything's going to be CinemaScope, and the game is to move everything inside there. So I will make those suggestions to artists. Very visual from my perspective. Yeah, the whole game is the overall plot and structure, the moments, those character moments. That, for example, one comes to mind. The first time La Muerta and Lady Death ever met, La Muerta tried to shoot Lady Death, and the bullet just bounced off her cheek. That's a moment. Another moment was in last year's storyline, Lady Death fought Lady Virtue, and Lady Virtue really sucked the life force out of Lady Death and put her in a coma. And upon Lady Death coming out of the coma, the first thing she did is she got up, she brushed past everybody, went into a bathroom alone, and checked to see if her face was intact. Now, that's a private moment that only the reader sees, but none of the other characters would see, because no way on earth would Lady Death let people see her be vulnerable like that. So I think moments are really cool in comics and give you not only a sense of character, but that connective tissue. I believe that it's kind of the moments are what people really remember, even more than the plot itself.
Jason Wyatt is hoping that you might reveal any artists from Swornfest.
The one person I could reveal so far is Brian Pulido is going to appear at Swornfest. I believe that you're going to start seeing reveals about Swornfest probably right at early June. I think we're going to start talking about that. But until then, we're signing them up. I think you're going to be surprised and pleased and tantalized.
So you mentioned Metallica. Any other music that you recommend?
Oh my God. Okay, so it depends on the vibe, right? So I'm stoked about the new Metallica. Doesn't everybody just want to hear a new record? I got a lot of shows lined up. I think next Saturday, me and a pal are going to go see Mastodon and Gojira. Get your tickets if you haven't. And my musical tastes range all over the place. I mean, my wife and I have, Francisca and I have tickets to Beck in August, because why not, right? I mean, I like all kinds of music. My musical excursions recently kind of go like this. I'm very late to the game with the band The Damned. Now, The Damned started out as a punk rock band, their first record, and they since grew into a rock band. And I only recently, like in the last 2 years, really started getting into The Damned. So I am completely fanning out on The Damned. I love their songs like Eleanor, Under the Floor. There's just so much great stuff. If you haven't, get into them. Their guitarist, Captain Sensible, formerly their bass player, is amazing. Now, sometimes my wife and I like to kind of get a loungy vibe. So the band that I listen to for a great loungy vibe happy hour is Tame Impala. Tame Impala is a single musician out of Australia who makes all his music. And again, it's like psychedelic lounge rock is the best way I could describe it. When he goes out on tour, he brings a bunch of people. Those are probably the two bands I've been vibing on hard. Another one that I always come back to on the weekend is a band out of Chicago, and I don't even know if they're active anymore, but it's a doom rock band called Doom Riders. Jimmy Coffin's on the other side, like just nodding, because we both like a lot of doom rock as well. I mean, the thing about me, it's really hard to pin me down because yes, I like metal. Yes, I like hard rock. I love trip hop. I like old school hip hop. I mean, I'm a music fan. You know, I love jazz, so I'm all about it. But those are probably those artists, and very consistently right now, Public Image Limited. If only because they have a new record coming out tomorrow as well. I'm very excited about that. Their first single drop, I think it's called Penang, and it's about Vikings. So it's really like the most hard rocking Public Image Limited I've heard. So look, my heart and soul belongs to heavy metal and hard rock, but I'm a music fan. Don't get it twisted. I like it all, and I always have.
Giannis wants to know, what is the most iconic Lady Death event that never leaves your heart?
The most iconic Lady Death event that never leaves my heart is Lady Death The Reckoning. Those first 3 issues are the origin story of the character. I think they still resonate today. And as I am embarking on the writing of the 2024 storyline, I feel it is incumbent upon me, 30 years later, to bookend that. What's changed? What's advanced? So that is always on my mind. To know her, the first line, I believe, the first caption is, to know her story is to know a woman cursed. And that is definitely a guiding light. So there is a quality where even when things are going good for Lady Death, there's a cost. And that is a guiding light.
Matt wants to know, what determines the amount of number runs for metal covers, chases, and etc.?
You know, what determines the print runs on the various projects is completely based on my gut reaction. Honestly, 32 years in the game, I am still the person who generally sets the print run. So I look and react to a piece of art and I say, you know, what should the edition be limited to? And it's purely on gut and instinct, maybe also artist popularity, quality of the image produced. So I just kind of use my background as a publisher to make my best, most educated guess.
Angel would like to know, which is your favorite Lady Death cover and why?
Angel, it's impossible to determine my favorite Lady Death cover and why, if only because I feel like I have a bit of ownership and fatherhood to everything that comes by. I would be silly not to acknowledge the power, the majesty, and the resonance of Stephen Hughes' cover to Lady Death #1. It cannot be denied.
Looks like we're should wrap it up.
All right, everybody. It looks like it's time. Again, if Jimmy Coffin will go back, please take a look. We're here at the Coffin Comics Company store. If you're in the tri-state area of Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Nevada, California, come out to HQ at 630 East University Drive, Mesa, Arizona, 85203 between 12 and 5 this Saturday, and meet Sora Sung, get a tour of the facility, and rock out with us. Folks, the excitement and the announcements that Coffin Comics has to bring you in the coming weeks and months have only begun. And I am not exaggerating remotely. And Jimmy, you know it's true. So stay tuned. You guys have been great. I've been Brian Pulido. This has been Beer with Brian, a program of the Sworn Club. Later.
Swornfest, Swornfest, Swornfest. Swornfest, the global gathering for Coffin Comics fiends and the Sworn, featuring exclusive parties, artists, signings, commissions, panels, beer, food, coffee, alcohol, tours of HQV2, trading posts, CGC, friendship, community, camaraderie, shenanigans, insanity, and more. Plan ahead.